Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the City of York Council Executive. My name is Councillor Pete Kilbane, and I will be in the chair tonight, which brings us straight on to our first matter of business, which is apologies for absence. The more observant amongst you will have noticed that I'm not Councillor Claire Douglas. Councillor Douglas sends her apologies this evening because she is attending the Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration and reflection that is taking part this evening on behalf of the council and on behalf of the residents of York. I know that there are many members around the table tonight who would also like to be present at that event, which has now become an established act of commemoration when people from all over the world come together to remember the destruction and devastation caused by the Holocaust and more recent genocides and persecution. This year in York, we are embracing the theme of bridging generations through a programme that seeks to commemorate the past, explore the continued persecutions of the present, and encourage positive actions that will make a difference in the future. So the day that we all wish we could be part of also seeks to serve us as a reminder that the responsibility of remembrance doesn't end with the survivors. It lives on through their children, their grandchildren, and through all of us. This theme encourages us all to engage actively with the past, to listen, to learn, and to carry those lessons forward. And as I say, Councillor Douglas is representing the council and the residents at that event. I have one other apology to make you aware of, and that is Councillor Pavlovic, who has unfortunately suffered a family bereavement today. So Councillor Pavlovic will also be absent for this evening's meeting. There are no other apologies and everybody else is present, and thank you all for being here. Does anybody have any declarations of interest in any of the business that is before us in today's meeting? No? Okay, thank you. Executive, are you okay to approve the minutes from the executive meeting held on the 2nd of December? Yeah, I see no objections, so thank you. Those minutes are approved. And that brings us on to public participation. We have two members of the public here to address executive this evening, both of whom are very welcome. And the first that I have on my list is Gwen Swinburne. Gwen is speaking to the remit of the committee, governance matters relating to this committee, including budget and procurement. Gwen, I know you're very familiar with the process. Would you like a 30-second warning? Okay, over to you, Gwen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on the procurement strategy alone. The report before you states this procurement strategy is presented directly to Executive for approval. That means there is no routine independent scrutiny of a document that will guide procurement decisions worth hundreds of millions of pounds. In those circumstances, recognised good practice, including CITFA and NAO office guidance, would expect the strategy itself to operationalise governance. That means setting out decision routes, member oversight points, treatment of key decisions and cumulative value, handling of extensions and variations, escalation and routes to audit and scrutiny. On that basis, the proposed strategy falls short. It asserts strong governance and accountability, but does not embed those mechanisms in the strategy. I also have a specific concern about risk. The decision report states that there are no known risks associated with this strategy. That statement is, to me, objectively unsustainable. The Audit and Governance Committee tomorrow contains extremely critical audit reports on capital projects, massive overspends. Good practice would expect those inherent risks to be acknowledged and addressed within this strategy. They're not. This represents a clear change from York's previous approach. An earlier procurement strategy explicitly embedded governance in the document itself. It linked procurement to key decision thresholds, required significant procurements and contract extensions to appear on the forward plan, which they generally don't, and treated extensions and cumulative contract value as governance decision points. I'm sorry, it's so boring. Those safeguards are no longer set out in the proposed strategy and have not been replaced. That is a material diminution of governance. It reduces clarity, visibility, and democratic control and on how major procurement decisions are made. Given the scale of spend this strategy will guide and the absence of audit and governance scrutiny, I would therefore ask members not to determine this tonight, but to refer the strategy to audit and governance at its next meeting. I have to be helpful because this is such a mess. My presentation, I mean, prepared an evidence-based table on the good practice for SIPFA and NAO and how ours falls short, which I will happily share with the committee, although I'm not an expert. Chair, we have to meet the minimum standards of SIPFA and NAO with our strategies, and we're beginning to fall a bit short, I'm afraid. I know the staff are stressed, but if you could look at that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen Swinburne. All the points that you've made will be taken into consideration when we get to that point on the agenda, and any points that can't be answered in the meeting tonight, I'm sure, will be addressed. So thank you once again for your contribution. And the second speaker that we have tonight is Joe Nasson. Joe wants to speak on item 6, which is the procurement strategy, to request that enforceable minimum environmental and labour standards in procurement, that performance criteria includes environmental and social justice criteria, that capital spending supports decarbonisation, that ethical investment policies are adopted, and that progressive revenue approaches are used to protect frontline services. Hope I haven't made your speech for you there, Joe, but thank you very much for providing all of that information in advance, and I'm sure you will now do it far more justice than me in the 3 minutes available. Do you require a 30-second warning?
Yes, please.
Okay, are you okay with that, Bryn? Okay, Joe, over to you.
Yeah, slightly diverting from what I was planning on speaking on, but still, this is important. This is a deeply disappointing budget for so many people who expected that with a Labour government, a Labour mayor and a Labour council, that they would start to see reductions in the cost of living, more affordability and better local services. Yet we have a budget which includes more and more cuts to day-to-day local services that residents rely on, and promises that it will only get worse in the next few years. So instead of the hoped for investment in local councils, York is forecast to lose over 20 million in non-council tax funding over the next 3 years. Even with a council tax rise of 4.99% each year, the maximum, York will be the lowest spending council per head of its kind in the country by 2028. Instead of a budget to start repairing the damage done to local councils over the last 15 years, we are offered more than 4 million of cuts in 2026, with a further 2 million written in for 2027. And cuts to vital support for some of our most vulnerable residents. This includes £400,000 reduction in government funding for the Household Support Fund and discretionary housing payments. Many York residents, including many households in work, rely on these grants to supplement low household incomes. It's even more disappointing that the council has chosen not to replace this lost funding, despite being able to find 380,000 for a package of additional spending on items such as quarterly council newspapers. So instead of providing hope for 2026, this budget just promises the start of a 2.5 million so-called transformation programme to further slash local services in attempt to close the 20 million funding gap for the next 2 years. The paragraph 145 pretty much says it. It says every aspect of the council spending will be considered, ranging from libraries to bus subsidies to grants to voluntary organisations. There will be no areas that are left unaffected. So more services will be distanced from residents through digitisation, more public assets will be sold off. As a Green Party campaigner, I believe all this is a shocking letdown for York residents. We live in one of the richest countries in the world, and yet we seem unable to provide decent services for our residents and to tackle the high cost of living.
30 seconds, Joe.
And equality in the city. I really urge you to challenge your government on this and would like to know what you're going to do to put this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. I think it was more really in reference to item number 10, I think, in terms of today's agenda, but certainly those points will be addressed, I'm sure, when we get to that part of the agenda. So thank you again for your contribution. Okay, so thank you, members of the public. We now move on to item number 5, which is the forward plan. Are members content with the forward plan as laid out in the documents on page 17? Yeah, everybody okay with that? Okay, moving on to the substantial part of the meeting in terms of the budget, because this is the executive budget meeting that we're at today. What I propose we do is, as in the past, we take items 7, 8 and 9 together. So that's Q3 Finance and Monitor, the Capital Programme and the Treasury Management Programme. So if we were to take all of those 3 together, and once we've had an introduction and an oversight of those 3, then we can take comments and views from the members. Is that okay? All right, so. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Can you tell I don't do this very often, can't you? So, Chloe, you thought you were going home then for a second, didn't you? Okay, oh, I do beg your pardon, yeah. And I can't believe you let me go all the way through that big speech before pulling me back in. Yeah, so. And I will do it again, Councillor Webb, just for your benefit. Okay, do beg your pardon. So let's go back to item number 6, which is the procurement strategy, which has been referred to already by our public speakers. So if I hand over to Chloe Wilcox, who will take us through the paper. So thank you, Chloe.
Yep, thank you, Chair, and I acknowledge both of the speakers' comments that they put forward as well. Hopefully I can address some of them through this at the moment, but others I will take away and respond on separately. So the report I will take as read lightly. It is to introduce the new updated procurement strategy. This has been done because of the change in procurement legislation. So we've had to make a lot of changes to internal policies and procedures and, of course, the procurement strategy itself. The intention with this was to make it a bit of an easier read and a bit more user-friendly, to really drive forward the visions and the priorities that we have as a commercial procurement team, but also as a wider council as well. So we've incorporated a lot of the standard policies that we have at the council, and a lot of the new policies as well will be included in procurement. In terms of the comments made, I will take that away, but I would like to say things around key decisions, variations, extensions. They are covered in our contract procedure rules, and that is where all of that data sits, which is also available online. But I will take that away and see if that could be merged together, and we will strengthen the governance section at the end of the strategy as well. So we will incorporate more of the governance structure around that. In terms of the second speaker's initial indications, again, some of them will be taken away. A lot of those are policies that we hold at the council that are and will continue to be embedded in procurement and in contracts. But I think what we can do is really look at how procurement can be another tool in the council's toolbox that helps drive forward each of those criteria that was mentioned. So the aim of today really is just to ask executive to approve the strategy, to allow that to be implemented and rolled out throughout the council.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. In relation to the specific concern that was raised about meeting minimum standards under SIPFA, does the strategy meet those standards in your view? In my view, yes. It's very, very similar to a lot of the local authorities' procurement strategies, because we all have the same aims and objectives. So in my opinion, yes, it does. Okay, thank you. Members, any questions or comments that you would like to make, indicate now or miss your chance to do so. So, hand over to Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, and it does follow on in some ways from what the public speaker said. I did speak to the Chair of Scrutiny, and he did point out that in January last year that the Head of Procurement did bring the draft social value policy to Scrutiny for us to review pre-decision, and this had followed on from a previous discussion in April 2024 in terms of changes to the procurement legislation, etc. And I think he and the committee were a little bit disappointed that there were no opportunities for Scrutiny to review this particular draft procurement strategy before it came here for approval. And obviously with it not appearing on the forward plan in time, there wasn't an opportunity for either him or the vice chair to discuss that and bring that to scrutiny. So it would have been ideal if it could have gone to scrutiny first, but we are where we are. And if you're minded to send it back to scrutiny prior to decision, that would be welcomed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chloe, and everyone who's worked on this strategy. And I think what is important to consider here is this is an overarching strategy that essentially just brings together all of the different policies, procedures, legislation that govern our procurement processes. So this isn't meant to be a set of rules about process. They are elsewhere in our constitution and in other policy and guidance documents. This is our overarching strategy, which is intended to give ourselves and those people who we may seek to work with on procurement an idea about what it is we want to achieve through procurement. It's not a set of rules and processes and procedures. It's not a set of limits about who makes what decision and how and where. It is a strategy. So I thank officers for making it easy to read, for trying to direct and signpost people to the very many different pieces of policy and legislation and guidance which will be used to make decisions about procurement, but actually to keep at its core our vision and our objectives from procurement. And I think this document does that very well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lomas. So I know the points raised by Councillor Eyre. I think if there are aspects that do require further scrutiny, they can be picked up in the future, and that this is very much an overarching strategy. And the aim of a lot of procurement approach that this administration has taken is to try and get as much of the wealth that's created in the region to be retained in the region for the benefit of the residents and the people who live here. So I think with that in mind, of this being quite a high level, I'm quite content to move to the recommendations and the reasons for it, which are on page 21 of your papers. And the recommendation is for the executive to approve the proposed procurement strategy and for this to be implemented and acted upon to reflect the additional transparency and compliance requirements in accordance with the Procurement Act. So, Executive, are you content to approve those recommendations and reasons? Okay, that is unanimous. So thank you very much. And thank you, Chloe, for all the work that you and your team have done on this. It's good to see this coming before executive. So thank you. Okay, and now with a certain feeling of deja vu, we move on to items 7, 8 and 9 on the agenda, which we will take all together as we have previously. So the monitor reports, etc., all taken together. So, having had some prior warning, can I hand over to you, Debbie Mitchell?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so these are third reports of the year and outline the latest information available on our budgets and performance. So for revenue, we continue to see an improvement in the forecast overspend, which now stands at 2.2 million, an improvement of about 4 million since Monitor 2. However, there are still areas of concern. Adult social care in particular remains the most significant area of concern, but a programme of work has been put together, has been developed to support both the improvement needed in adult social care and to deliver savings. So cost control measures remain in place and they will be reviewed over the coming weeks actually to see if they need to be increased. And this report also includes some specific recommendations around accepting funding. For capital, the report identifies, again, quite a chunk of slippage, 24 million, but that's due to rephasing of the programme, mainly around the transport schemes. The report itself contains a lot of detail around achievements and individual progress on individual schemes, and the recommendations do set out any of the decisions that are needed. And then the last of the monitoring reports is the Treasury Management Monitor 3. So just in respect of Treasury Management activities, it's a statutory requirement to bring this report to you, but to make you aware, this report will be considered by Audit and Governance Committee at their meeting tomorrow. So they will do the scrutiny, but there's nothing of particular concern to draw to your attention.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. And again, thank you for all of the work that clearly goes into these reports. Members, do we have anybody that would like to make any comments at all on any of these? I have Councillor Wren, Councillor Lomas. So Councillor Wren.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you to officers for the work they've done, the work they continue to do over the period in terms of this. But I think the report does lay bare the failures of this administration to understand and get to grips with adult social care. Since just 2024, you've added almost £15 million worth of growth, and yet today are still forecasting an overspend of £7 million at Q3. That's a staggering £22 million increase in spend in just 2 years. And despite that, we're delivering a service that barely scraped above a failing grade from the CQC. Yes, adult social care is a national issue and another area where we've been let down badly by this government, but York is now an outlier for all the wrong reasons. 2 years of throwing more money at the problem has achieved little, and the council needs real political leadership to work with our excellent staff team to turn around both the financial and general performance of the service. We have little confidence the administration will do this. Elsewhere, despite all the talk pre-2023 that York needs to be weaned off dependency on car park income, this administration has done the direct opposite, with an outturn more reliant on car park income than any budget in history. That is, of course, bad news on all fronts, but the bare facts on transport are that of further failure. Bus usage is down by 250,000 users, cycle journeys are down, car park visits are down, city centre footfall is down. Last quarter, the city centre, we saw October footfall down 140,000, November down 191,000, December down 243,000. Most of this has, of course, been conveniently forgotten in this performance report, but while the executive can choose to ignore the calamitous impacts of your policies, that luxury is not afforded to city centre businesses and our local economy. Sales figures show year-on-year increases right up until the parking charge changes in May, and now we see sales down every month since. I do wonder how many more city centre businesses will be banning all Labour councillors in the coming months. Elsewhere, we can't ignore an almost 10% drop in the amount of recyclate collected. While recycling has stubbornly hovered around the 50% for far too long, congratulations to this administration, you finally moved the dial. Unfortunately, completely the wrong direction, with a perhaps record low of 40%. On other flagship policies, affordable housing delivery has ground to a halt. Since this administration took the decision to step away from direct delivery, completions have plummeted. Just 36 in 3 quarters last year is less than the council itself would have delivered on either Ordnance Lane or Castle Mills had those schemes not been halted. On capital, the story remains the all-consuming sinkhole that is Station Gateway. This scheme will forever define the worst of this administration. A £26 million scheme forecast to outturn now at over £54 million. A scheme in such a critical state, it is now flagged by both internal and external audit, not because of Ukraine or COVID, but because of poor decision-making by this administration and a failure to recognise the value of capital expenditure when pushing through a flawed senior management restructure, one that has cost this city dearly on so many levels. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Your positive contributions are always welcome. Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading a different paper to what other people seem to be reading. In previous monitors, we've had difficult messaging. Councillor A, you might want to turn your microphone off. Thank you. We've had difficult messaging about predicted overspends because of ever increasing demand for services from the council. And I'm really proud of the fact that the entire council team has worked on reducing those overspends. And yet here we are looking at our Q3 monitor, having reduced the predicted overspend to 2.2 million, which is brilliant. And I commend everyone who's worked to achieve that. Councils are under more pressure than ever to deliver more with less. And there are many residents who think that that's right, that we should be delivering more with less. And I talk to them all the time, and we listen to them. We listen to what they've got to say, and we listen to their views on what services are delivered, how and where. So we've managed to reduce our overspend in challenging circumstances to 2.2 million, which is a good news story. A real improvement on the position we discussed previously. And there does remain an overspend on adult social care. And I will never sit here and say that we shouldn't spend that money, because that is money we are spending on delivering the biggest part of our budget directly to support people that need it most in our communities. We all know that our entire country is going through multi-layered crises of help and support needs at the moment, and that is really driving both the demand for our service and the complexity of that demand. And I know that had we been here to talk about what's happening in adult social care, there would be many details that we would discuss about what causes those problems and how to resolve them. And the real way to resolve them is through early intervention and prevention, through driving initiatives that support public health and well-being right throughout our communities. And those investments in doing those things, we will make those investments now, and we will not see any reduction in costs as a result of them for years. And we are suffering now because of decisions made in the past not to invest in those things, and decisions made in the past that have left communities struggling. And we won't do that. We'll always make the difficult decisions to make sure that we direct funding where it's most needed. So we're doing better, but nobody is under any illusion that everything is perfect. And we know that there are things we still need to work on. And I just want to pick up on a couple of things that Councillor Eyre particularly highlighted. He talked about delivery of affordable housing. Well, we stopped the delivery plan that was in place because the delivery plan that was in place would not have delivered enough affordable housing to serve the needs of our communities. And so we had to replace it with a new plan that would deliver 100% truly affordable housing where we were building on our land. And you can't just do that. You can't wave your magic wand and have those houses spring from the ground. So we do have a plan that will deliver 100% affordable, truly affordable housing on council land, and we will deliver that. Councillor Eyre also mentioned Station Gateway, conveniently forgetting that it was not this administration that set up a contract which has left us liable for massive overspends. But we are getting on and we're solving the problems that have been caused and managing to deliver a project against all odds. And every time I travel into this office, I notice little things about what that development will really mean for people who use the station, who travel to, from, past and through it, wherever they need to go. And so, do you know what? I'm proud of that as well. It may be that we've had to spend more money than we would have wanted to on it, but we're delivering it and we're getting it done. And across everything else, across these monitors, whether it be our financial position, our performance position, our capital programme position, we are solving problems, deep-rooted problems that have taken many years to grow, and we are taking the tough decisions where tough decisions are needed to solve the problem and not just stick a plaster on it and kick it down the road until some other administration comes along, which has been what has happened too many times in the past. You won't see that from us because we are applying our work ethic and our bravery and willingness to stand up and do the right thing.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. I just nearly burst out into applause there, but remembered where I was. Yeah, no, and thank you, and thanks for your contributions from opposition, Councillor. We do live in a glass house, as indeed we should, so everybody can see what's going on in the council. And when you're in opposition, it is quite nice to stand at the sidelines and throw stones at that glass house. And I should know, because I used to do that when I was leader of the opposition in a past life. However, I don't think in the climate that we're operating in, that really does the city the service that it deserves. We do have very difficult problems to face. I mean, adult social care nationally, and successive governments have failed to get to grips with it, is a huge and growing problem, and it's not going to go away. It's not going to get any better. The thing that I worry about is that at the moment, we do have quite a lot of people who pay for their own care when they need it, when they're older. And that's because in York, we do have what are called self-funders, essentially people who are selling their houses in order to pay for their care. But we have a generation of people coming through who don't have a house and who don't have those assets. And there is a ticking time bomb as to who and how are those people going to be looked after when they need that care. At the moment, it's the local authorities that are picking it up, and as has been pointed out, the costs for that are enormous. I'm sure that Councillor Steels-Woolshaw will talk to that point later on in the meeting. But, let's just be honest and say we've got a serious problem that we're all struggling and trying to get to grips with. And the other thing is we can all, as I know, because I used to do it, can read reports and pick out the stones that we think would be good to throw and might score as a point in the press or something like that. Whereas actually, the business of governance is a serious business, and what we say and what we do has a real impact in the city. I was somewhat confused during the week because I was reading in the paper that the chair of the High Street Forum was saying that the car parking charges were terrible and were going to lead to the dereliction of the High Street. And in the same day, the chair of the High Street Forum was saying that York's a brilliant place to do business and everybody should open a shop here because it's thriving. Well, it can't really be both. And as far as business is concerned, then what really matters is the fact that people have confidence in the place and have confidence in the businesses. And we can all look at stats and twist and turn them, but what you cannot deny is that York is doing better than most other places in this region, and actually most other places in the north and into the entire country. So, York is punching above its weight, and York is performing far better on most indicators than most other places. We're not complacent, but footfall has held up when you compare it to national average. Spending has held up when you compare it to national average, not related at all to any of the changes around parking, etc. So we are doing well, and it's really important that we get that message out there that this is a great place to invest. It's a great place to do business. I totally agree with the chair of the High Street Forum on that, and we encourage more people in here so we get into that benign circle and everybody can share in that wealth. So on that note, we will move on to the recommendations, and I have been informed, much to my relief, that I don't have to read out all of the recommendations. So the first is for Q3 Finance Performance and Monitor on page 46 of your pages. Am I the only person that's actually using a paper copy here tonight? I am, aren't I? I don't know if the numbers correlate to the numbers that you've got on your computers, but we're doing okay so far, right? Okay. So it's paragraphs, as noted in paragraphs 18 and 19 on page 46. So that's to do with and 20. Oh, I've got my little sticky over that. Okay. And 20. So in relation to noting the report and the support that's needed in relation to accepting the funding that's coming from the combined authority and in relation to accepting other external funding. Members, can I see all those who support those recommendations? Thank you. I think that's unanimous. And then on to agenda item number 8. And again, if you turn to page or scroll to page 102 on your computers, You will see there paragraph number 7, recommendations to full council in the adjustments that need to be made. So, members, are you happy to approve the recommendations as noted in paragraph 7 on page 102? Thank you. And then on to agenda item number 9. And if you scroll down to page 136, paragraph 6, recommendations and reasons. So that's paragraph 6, 7 and 8 as noted on that page. Everybody content to recommend those? Thank you. And that concludes agenda items 7, 8 and 9. So thank you all for that. Okay, which moves us on to agenda item number 10, which is the financial strategy 26-27 to 2030-31. In other words, the budget. So, Debbie, can I hand over to you?
Thank you. So yeah, this report sets out the revenue budget proposals for 2026-27 for the next financial year. Subject to your agreement tonight, will of course be referred on to full council for final approval. The report sets out a proposed council tax increase of 2.99% plus the government adult social care precept of 2%, so a total of 4.99%. Investment of 19 million is outlined in paragraph 75 to 77, and the proposed savings are outlined in Annex 2. The budget continues to invest significantly in adults, which does reflect where we're seeing the pressures as we've just discussed earlier, and this is essential investment to make sure we're delivering a robust budget. The report also includes details of the 3-year funding settlement and the impact of the fair funding review. And whilst not unexpected, the severe negative impact of the fair funding review does unfortunately mean that the council's financial position is going to remain incredibly challenging for the foreseeable future. I do just need to point out an error in the report. So in paragraph 162, the figure quoted regarding the overall HRA reserve forecast at the end of 26-27 should read 10,494, so 10,494,000 as per Annex 5 and not the 3 million figure stated. So apologies for that. So the Annex 5 is correct. It's just an error in the body of the report. The other annexes to the report detail the fees and charges proposals, and the report also covers the housing revenue account, including approval of the rent increase and schools funding as well, and the dedicated schools grant. And then finally, the report just draw attention to the report does include a statement from myself as the Section 151 officer on the robustness of the proposals overall and the review of reserves. And that outlines that whilst, yet again, the budget is very challenging and it's not without risk, it does still represent a robust budget that does include provision for all known pressures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, do I have, and thanks for the extensive work that's gone into this by you and your team, as well as members. So do we have anybody that wants to comment on the budget? Okay, so oh, that's everybody. Okay, I'll take you all in order going around, starting with Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure you'd be glad to know I was anticipating you taking 10 and 11 together, so I'd only be speaking once in terms of both the capital and the revenue budget. Obviously, echo again my thanks to the officers and their team. I've been there, done that. It's the worst possible time to be doing budgeting. Always comes up over Christmas. We get last minute announcements before Christmas, and it means that nobody really gets to enjoy that Christmas and New Year period quite as much as we would all like to when it comes to doing that. In terms of the specifics of the budget, obviously we'll reserve most of our comments until the Budget Council going forward. However, there were 2 areas that I just want to refer to this evening. The budget consultation has been frankly embarrassing. The latest published budget in this authority's history is yet again the latest failure to deliver the very basics that this council should have been doing. There's been no consultation with the public, and even businesses have flagged up their total failure to be able to contribute meaningfully to these proposals. The Heworth by-election in reality is not why the public and businesses have not had the opportunity to engage the way they should have been. That's because since taking office, you've delayed and delayed publication of the budget. Had the publication been done in December, as has always been done previously, all of the secrecy would have been avoided. With a 3-year settlement and just over 10 months to the announcement of the 27-28 budget, we would urge you tonight to start consulting the public now and meaningfully going forward to the next budget setting process. Secondly, we'd just like to comment, as was mentioned by one of the public speakers, the truly catastrophic funding settlement that's been imposed on the council by the Labour government. This isn't austerity, this is austerity on steroids. Only a few years ago, you waxed lyrical about a Labour government freezing council tax and an end to austerity. Instead, the council and residents are being pushed to the financial abyss. Even after inflation-busting council tax rises, York's core spending power will fall to £923.94 per person, around £110 less per resident than the next lowest funded unitary council, over £500 below the national average, and barely half of what authorities such as Middlesbrough will be spending. These figures place York not at the bottom of the table, but in a league of its own. This is a savage attack on York's finances, with government funding stripped away at a scale that dwarfs anything the city has seen before. Over the next 3 years alone, York is set to lose £38 million in government funding, going from £75.7 million received this financial year all the way down to £55.5 million by the end of the spending review. This is nothing other than a total betrayal of this city by the Labour Party.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councillor. What I'll do is I'll move around the table. I think I'll come to you last, Councillor Lomas, if that's okay, because it is your paper. So, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight the really welcome investment in this difficult budget. And despite very difficult challenges and an ageing and vulnerable population, I'm really pleased that we're putting additional funding into our neighbourhood caretakers, which has been so welcome and so valued by residents. This reflects our pride in our communities, our pride in our public spaces, and our overall pride in our city. And it will further support the work that neighbourhood caretakers are doing across our wards and communities, informed by local residents' personal preferences and choices, and informed by ward councillors' knowledge of the areas, and really responding locally to where priorities lie. So it's fantastic that we can add to the already considerable ongoing increase in investment in this area to improve our public spaces and our how our communities look and feel. And I also want to welcome something which many administrations have talked about or considered but not done, an increase in investment which is going to enable us to bring our weed control in-house. This means we have better control, we have more bespoke possibilities to be able to respond more in a more agile way rather than a fixed external contractor. And this is an additional spend in addition to the original contract price. So again, in really challenging circumstances, we're responding to local needs, local demands, local people's wants and needs. So it's fantastic from my perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. And yeah, the neighbourhood caretakers gone down really well, really sprucing places up. I think in terms of my Facebook posts, they definitely get the most reactions for transforming where people live. People love to see it, and it's good that we're bringing the weed spraying back in house, but the controversies will still rage, I'm sure, around weed control. Councillor Avilius.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the parking fees that we've set and how this continues to align with our transport strategy. So first of all, just to talk about our Res Park fees. So this year we've been able to work through a lot of the backlog on Res Park applications and approve a number of more areas. And this has allowed us to freeze charges on Res Park for this year. And that reflects our commitment to use Res Park as a tool for communities to shape their neighbourhood and maintain the parking and the amenity that they require. And those fees cover the cost of the implementation and enforcement that we need to do for Res Park, but it's not used as a revenue raiser. So that's very much reflecting our strategy around placemaking and giving residents the amenity they need in their areas with parking. On the car park fees, we've held the £3 fee for community car parks, recognising that we're doing a parking review on those areas at the moment, and we're going to be listening to the feedback on that. And in the city centre and on-street parking, we've increased the parking fees by 3% in line with inflation. And we've also maintained the structure of the fees so that the first 2 hours of parking remains pegged to the cost of a family bus ticket, because of the anticipation that bus tickets will also increase in price. And this continues to support our transport strategy objectives of reducing congestion and increasing bus use. And this is where I find I live in a different universe to Councillor Eyre, because we are starting to see the success of that strategy from last year, with a continued increase in people using the bus. And our Park and Ride has carried the most passengers ever in December, 7.5% increase. And that's compared to record-breaking increases last year as well. So people really are starting to use the bus and choose that as an alternative mode of travel. And all of the increased revenue that we do make from parking is reinvested back into transport to start bringing the benefits that we need to see in our transport systems. And we've also continued with our Minster badge discount for residents to make sure that residents don't feel the burden of this. So there's a 30% discount for daytime rates and a 50% discount for evening parking rates for residents. So you know, we're pleased to continue with that support to the transport strategy and see the success of that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Avilius. So that's record-breaking numbers on the Park and Ride, improving on the record-breaking numbers on the Park and Ride the previous year. So that certainly feels to me like something that's that's heading in the right direction. And yes, it would be somewhat perverse to put up parking fees in when we're doing a review into the parking fees in those community car parks. I think that would be, we would be accused of prejudging the outcome of the review, I think, in that respect. But I also find in politics, if you put things up in line with inflation, it's called a hike, not an inflationary increase. So we're all learning. Okay, Councillor Steels-Walshaw.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. So we're investing an additional £10.8 million in adult social care, and this is hugely positive and really welcomed. Adult social care is facing pressure unlike anything we've ever seen before. Demand is rising sharply and the complexity of people's needs is increasing year on year. And this is driven by national policy requirements, demographic change, and a growing number of residents living longer with multiple interlinked health conditions. These are not abstract trends, these are real pressures that shape the daily experience of our workforce and the lives of the people we support. At the same time, cost inflation in adult social care consistently runs ahead of inflation measures. The price of residential placements, supported living, specialist provision has risen far faster than general inflation, and workforce costs have increased significantly, and the fees paid by individuals do not come close to the growth in expenditure. In practical terms, this means that even to stand still, we must spend significantly more every year. Adult social care has been asked to deliver within its means, avoid further overspending, and implement both its improvement plan and its cost reduction plan. The funding is about stabilising it so that it can meet its statutory duties and deliver the improvements that this administration and residents rightly expect. York faces an ageing population, increasing diagnoses of neurodiversity, rising mental health needs, and the greatest pressures fall in residential care and learning disability services, where complexity is increasing and costs are escalating. Adult social care cannot refuse care. It is a statutory duty. York, being the great city it is, has higher number of average than people who choose to retire here. And as their needs grow, we must also respond. An outcome following the CQC is that we are heading in the right direction, but there is more work to do, and this investment allows us to continue the work. But improvement is not only about spending more, it's about spending better. We're already reducing costs through stronger contract management, better commissioning, and a focus on value for money. As Councillor Lomas has already touched on, we know that early intervention and prevention are the most effective ways to reduce long-term demand. When people are supported earlier, When they remain connected to their community and people live independently for longer, outcomes do improve and costs fall. This funding is therefore not only the right thing to do, but also strategic investment. It stabilises the services, supports essential improvement and ensures that statutory duties are met. It recognises that rising demand and increasing complexity require us to spend more to maintain safe, lawful services, and it enables us to shift towards prevention, building a sustainable future where long-term costs reduce because we have invested wisely. This is not optional, this is responsible, it is necessary and the right thing to do for the people of York.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Steelswell, and that really does lay out the challenges that we face with adult social care. Of course, we have to provide that care, but it is increasing and more expensive demands that are upon us. I'm sure if Councillor Pavlovic was here, he'd also mention the £500,000 that's being invested for aids and adaptations in people's homes so that they can stay at home longer in terms of preventative measures to try and, well, people want to stay at home, don't they? So that's why you spend it. But of course, the advantage of that, it is actually cheaper for the local authorities to look after people in their own homes. It is a circle that we will continue trying to square, and all hands to the pump on that project. So thank you for that. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Continuing the theme of challenges that we rise to. In children's services and in children's services across the country, we've got a positive challenge to deal with, and that is we've got a Labour government that is ambitious for children. It's a refreshing change after 15 years of nothing from the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. And the challenge, I suppose, is the amount of change and the amount of policy that's being driven by central government that needs to be addressed, dealt with and implemented in this city. As we know, we went from a position under the Liberal Democrat and Green coalition where they were really struggling with children's services. It was not in the shape it needed to be in, and actually we're now in a position where we have an outstanding service. And DFE officials, people are coming to talk to us about how to run things. And actually, we're in a fortunate position in that a lot of the changes that are being asked for by the Josh McAllister report, for example, who is now the Children's Minister, in York, we were already ahead of the curve there, and we're starting to process a lot of those changes. But there is an awful lot to do. The government recognises that and has awarded additional grants to tackle that. Would I like more? Of course I'd like more. That would be very, very helpful. But in reality, we are getting on with the job and making improvements and changes to the service for the betterment of children and families in this city. One specific additional grant is £664,000. That is added into 400k of CYC investment to look at casework capacity and oversight, and that's obviously to support young people in our care system and their families, and importantly, to prevent those young people entering the care system in the first place with early help and preventative services. So that is a massive, massive improvement. That's something we haven't seen before. We've not seen that ambition at all since, to be honest, the last Labour government a long time ago, sadly. The other thing I wanted to talk about is a tiny line in this budget, but it is a significant one for children and schools in the city. And that is £20,000 for the continuation of the Filmmaking in Schools project. That project's been running for a couple of years now. The intention of the project is, for anyone who's not aware of it, school children in secondary schools in York are offered the opportunity to work with industry leading specialists in the schools to develop and build little 5-minute films. Now, these are opportunities that children in our state schools would not ordinarily get, but because of the really, really forward-thinking approach of places like Aesthetica in our city, They've introduced this project because they recognise that our young people deserve that. They've got the ambition for our young people to make that happen. Again, that is a positive thing. And through a small amount of investment on behalf of this council, it's something that we can continue and make happen for another year. That is a really, really positive step forward. And I'm hopeful that yet again we'll be at another premiere. Me and Councillor Kilbane have been a couple of times now, haven't we? It's usually following Remembrance Day, so you can remember when it is. It's on that Sunday afternoon. It's a fantastic event. It's making a huge difference to those children and could potentially change their lives and their career path. And that is really positive. So we shouldn't forget the small things that we're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Webb. And also, thanks to all of those media companies in the city who give their time either for free or at cost to help all. So every state secondary is now part of the project, I think, in York. And while going to the premiere with 350 excited teenagers because they're seeing their films being projected onto a great big screen in City Screen, and all of their excited friends, family, etc. Well, that's great. One of the main points of the project is that it says to kids who are not necessarily academically inclined, and quite frankly, why should they be? We're not all academically inclined. It says to them that there are good careers that you can have in this city doing something that you're good at and you're interested in. And it's just about broadening those pathways. And I think we need to probably do some more work on how we then take those kids on that journey into that industry. And I know that's something that you're looking at with your skills hat on, Councillor Webb. And the other thing that you raise is bringing in those additional pots of money. Because of the financial situation that councils find themselves in, it's never been more important that we go out there and we find what funding is available, what additional pots of money can be brought into the city for the benefit of the residents of this city. And to do that, you need a council that's ambitious, you need a council that's looking for it, and you need a council that's on it. And thankfully, that's where we are. That's what we've got. That's what residents would expect us to do. And that's what we are doing. And some of the projects that are listed here today are up and running because we've gone out and secured that cash and the opportunities that brings. So, and there's going to need to be more of that in the future. And it's good to see. Okay, Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start by talking a little bit about the process we've been through to get to the point of bringing this report to executive tonight. So when the Labour government came in, they indicated that they would finally deliver the fair funding review that has been promised for a long, long time to look at how funding is allocated to local authorities. And we waited and we waited and we waited. And I think it became clear that coming to a new funding formula for local government was not a simple endeavour. And I'm pleased that the government took the time to try to come to a formula that prioritised funding on the basis of deprivation, because I think we would all agree that you should always give the biggest piece of the pie to those people who are most in need of it. The problem that we face, of course, is that the pie simply isn't big enough. Our total funding for local government nationally is simply not enough. And so that means that we've had a really difficult outcome from the fair funding review. It also has meant that it's taken much, much longer to get an indication of what our settlement might be. Happily, of course, it is a 3-year settlement. So although our poor finance teams were working right up to the wire to a few days before Christmas to understand what our funding would be, we now have a good indication of what it will be for 3 years. And I'm surprised to hear Councillor Eyre bemoaning the contracted process of setting the budget, because he was, of course, on the scrutiny task and finish group, last year, where we discussed extensively the challenges of waiting for the fair funding review, what that would mean for the process we needed to go through to even start to set and talk about the budget. And he talked about the consultation, and in fact, every recommendation that the cross-party task and finish group looking at the budget process made about how we communicate more widely with residents, with businesses, with other stakeholders about our budget process has been taken on board and delivered, because I was absolutely clear that where there were things that the group suggested that could be done in the moment as we went along, we should do that. We were not going to wait until that report comes back from scrutiny in March to executive to actually take on board good ideas, no matter which party they came from. So we've done that. Now, not getting an indication of what our settlement was going to be until so late means that we were always going to be constrained in how much consultation we could do on detail relating to the budget. But that doesn't mean we did no consultation relating to the budget. And again, at the suggestion of the cross-party budget task and finish group, we actually started by creating some comms that would help people to understand local government financing, to understand what the council is and isn't responsible for funding, to understand what our processes were. That is the only part that was affected by the by-election, because that communication was stopped during the campaigning, rightly and properly so. But we used all of the suggestions we were given. We're not proud. We won't deny a suggestion just because it comes from someone from a different party. But where we ended up in December, just before Christmas, was the realisation that the pie wasn't big enough to give York a fair share. And when you divide up a smaller pie, and let's be realistic about this, the pie is not big enough because our economy was trashed by a previous government. The pie isn't big enough because of decades of underfunding and undervaluing of local government. All of those things need fixing, and they're not going to be fixed this year. They're not going to be fixed next year. And it'll probably take many years before those things are fixed and our share of the pie can get bigger again. But as you might expect, we have been out there fighting for York throughout. Councillor Douglas and I met with the minister. We had a private meeting with the minister. Both of our MPs have met with ministers. Our mayor has lobbied on our behalf. There has been a joint letter to the Secretary of State on behalf of the council leader, both MPs and the mayor, to set out what we believe is a problem with the fair funding review, not a problem that is caused by seeking to put funding where it is most needed, but a problem that is caused by that pie just being too small. So we've been out there, we've been fighting for York. We've also been making the case for wider investment in our city. We've been out there working collaboratively at all levels to make the case for York, because of course we can't forget my golden rule of local government finance, and in York it is particularly appropriate that we can do whatever we want. We just have to find someone else to help us to pay for it. I think it's also important to note that some of our particular financial challenge through this fair funding formula that has been applied comes from the fact that we have a lower than average council tax rate. And I think many residents will be surprised by that, because council tax bills feel big. But our Band D council tax is just over £200 less than the average. And the funding formula assumes that you will charge the average council tax. And that means that we are deducted around £200 of funding for each Band D property where we cannot collect that average council tax and commensurate levels within the other bands. And that means we lose out on funding. And actually, if our council tax was the same as the average, we probably wouldn't have as much doom and gloom to report about the fair funding formula. But of course, most of our budget is spent on services for children and adults, and we are investing more in both services to ensure we can meet the demand on us for the good of everyone in our communities. But that does come at a cost. But when we have gone out and talked to people about our budget, about our financial situation, about how we spend money, time and time and time again, residents say, get rid of all the waste, get rid of the duplication, get rid of the inefficiency, make that organisation work better before you cut services to us. So that's exactly what we've done. We have a transformation programme in place that is cutting waste, cutting inefficiency and delivering more for less money. And that's exactly what residents want from us. And that's exactly what we're delivering.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lomas. And yeah, certainly, in terms of the level of council tax, I think we're in the bottom 23% in the country for a Band D. But in spite of that, we were judged independently to be one of the most productive councils in England. So it's that mixture of actually doing more with less is what we do. We are a productive and therefore efficient council, but we can become more productive and more efficient. And of course, we would also like more. We would like to do more with more. But historically, the council tax base is low. So yes, we're £200 below the national average. The funding formula was set on per person, but also a quite small population at 200,000. So there's less council tax to collect. So I mean that's been the dilemma that we're in. Just to address a couple of your points, Joe, from earlier on. As Councillor Lomas has said, there are no cuts to frontline services in this budget. We are making a stretch, and in fact, there's some investment that hasn't been raised because Councillor Pavlovic sadly can't be with us this evening. But he did ask me to point out that we were seeing £1 million extra invested in the communal areas of our estates. So those of you who spend time on our estates will know that sometimes the communal areas look a bit sad, tired and neglected. We think this is the biggest investment in our council estates that any of us can certainly remember, to bring them back up to where they need to be, plus the additional funds, the £500,000 million that's going into retrofit, along with all of the other improvements that's going on to our council estates. But we are not in a position that we would like to be, particularly for the subsequent years. And Councillor Lomas has already alluded to some of the behind the scenes negotiations and arguments that have been going on. And what I can tell the city is that those arguments will continue. We're not going to accept a formula that starts to leave us short. We think there are things that should have been picked up that haven't been picked up. We would welcome a cross-party approach on that. I know we did that, was it last September? We sent joint letters around fair funding review. Very happy to pick that up again because we will always put city above party, and that's the council, that's the MPs, and that's the mayor. That's the position that we're in. I think we've done really well this year to maintain a balanced budget with no cuts in services, but with all of the investments that have been referred to around the table tonight. And there's lots more besides. So there's definitely work to be done, but I would like to say thank you to everybody that's been involved in the process so far. And that leads us to the recommendations, which are on page 161 in my papers, being the only person here with papers. And it's at paragraph 17, and paragraph 17 and 18 as noted, to recommend these proposals to council and to approve the rent increase of 4.8%. Are members happy to approve those recommendations? Thank you. That is unanimous. And that leads us on to item 11, which is the capital budget. So Debbie, over to you again.
Thank you. Yeah, so the capital budget report outlines the capital programme for the next 4 years, a particular focus obviously on the next financial year. This report would usually add investment for an additional year into the programme. However, as capital investment funded by borrowing clearly has a revenue impact, and mindful of the council's financial position in light of the fair funding review, this report proposes again an ongoing review of the levels of capital investment needed to be reviewed during 27-28. A total of 42 million will be added into the overall multi-year programme, but that's mainly from assumed external transport funding that's outlined in table 7. So the report outlines lots of details about the various schemes and how they're funded, and you're again being asked just to recommend the proposals to full council.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Any comments on item number 11? Okay, Councillor Eyre.
Just a question, hopefully you can answer this one, Debbie. That reference to, I was scabbed you out for because I hadn't seen the growth in. The reference to the additional money for communal spaces, I believe refers to page 304, which is not additional money. That's just unspent money from this year being spent next year. Is that correct?
Just have to give me a minute to get there. Sorry, page 304.
Paragraph 41, members will note a significant level of carry forward into 26-27. Proposed 500,000 is set aside for additional aids, 1 million, I think, and the remaining budget carried forward.
Yeah, it is carried forward into 26-27, and the different way that's set aside. But yeah, it's additional funding in 26-27.
But it's 25-26 funding that's being spent a year late.
Still additional funding in 26-27.
I think our council estate residents won't care how it's categorised. They'll just be glad to see the much needed investment in their communal areas. So else we've got Councillor Avilius. Did I see your hand going up?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our highways maintenance programme and flag up the largest ever investment of over 12 million going into maintaining our highways, 500 miles of them, our 67 bridges and our thousands of streetlights. The team are doing a really fantastic job under challenging conditions. We inherited a deteriorating network where reactive maintenance and resurfacing had been prioritised at the expense of preventative maintenance. We've been turning that around, and we now prioritise that preventative maintenance, such as surface dressing and large patch repairs, which maintain our highways for significantly longer and reduce the future spend by 5-fold. So it's really, really good spend to save. So we spend over a quarter of our highways budget on that preventative maintenance compared to less than 5% when the Lib Dem Green administration were in power. Gradually, we're seeing the backlog of repairs decrease. It was around 150 million worth of repairs needed when we came into to administration. Now we're at about 90 million. So we've still got a long way to go, but we're heading in the right direction. We're also making sure that our highway maintenance supports sustainable travel and road safety, with priority given to repairing bus routes and key cycle routes, and additional investment for pavement repairs and off-road walk cycle network repairs, which just weren't being looked at previously. And finally, we're really proud of the work our teams are doing to include improvements at the same time as we maintain our highway network, to reduce the disruption on the roads and ensure that we maximise the benefits of our maintenance programme. Last year, we included pavement improvements, dropped curbs, safer road layout for cycling, and trialled more accessible speed hump designs. And this year, we've set aside a 300,000 pot to deliver more of those improvements, and look forward to seeing what the team are going to deliver there.
Thank you, Councillor Revilius. A 12 million record investment, most ever invested in the highway network. And I remember, I can talk a little bit about this because I was transport for the first year of the administration when we made the decision to go to large patch repairing rather than pothole filling. So that is, instead of finding a pothole, coming along and chucking some tarmac in it, and it'll last, 3 years if you're lucky. We do larger patch repairs and they last 15 to 20 years. And slowly over time, you start to repair your road network. And I remember at the time thinking, this is political suicide, because I won't be able to say at the end of the year, we filled 2,500 potholes. But what we will do is actually bring the road network up to a fit state. And I've actually got to say that I know this is a terrible time to be announcing highway spending and progress on road repairs, because this is the time of year when all the holes open up, isn't it? When you've had some frost and you've had some ice and everybody's looking at the road saying they're terrible. However, people have said to me that they have noticed incremental, and it is incremental, improvement. And I think if administrations keep on with this approach, then we will eventually catch up with the highway network and maintain it to the standard that residents quite rightly expect. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to really highlight very briefly the additional 1 million spend on retrofit, further retrofit, because it's so welcome. You've already touched on it yourself, but this is going to be warmer homes, lower energy bills, healthier people, and cutting our emissions. And it was a core manifesto promise that we would cut carbon and insulate homes. And I'm really pleased, on top of the over 1,000 properties that we've already insulated, this is going to be an additional boost to make more people better off, warmer, healthier, and cut our emissions. So thank you for that.
Win, 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 win. Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Lomas.
Thank you. The capital programme is always challenging because it's big and it's ambitious and it costs us money. And at a time when we are having to think very carefully about every penny of expenditure in our revenue budget, what we don't want to do is add tons to it. So we've been really, really careful looking at our ongoing capital programme, sums that are already committed for various different projects, the rolling programme, which allows us to maintain and upkeep a whole host of different infrastructure in the city. And we have had very, very minor additions to the capital programme this year, because we are mindful of the need to be careful and prudent. But I just want to highlight one item of additional capital budget, and that is for further improvements to the crematorium. The crematorium is an essential service that we provide for residents. Many people in this room and many people who will be listening to report backs on this will have been to the crematorium in recent years and will know that around the edges it's looking a little faded. And when we took over, we committed some investment into expanding the size of the waiting room and making waiting facilities better, so that no longer would people have to stand out in the freezing cold and sideways rain while waiting for their loved ones to arrive at the crematorium for a service. No longer would people be forced to rush off immediately at the end of a service because there was nowhere for them to come together and share a moment of reflection before the next service was due. And I'm really proud of the fact that we invested in that service that people don't see necessarily on a day-to-day basis. But what we also discovered was that there were more facilities that needed upgrading at the crematorium, and one of the key purposes of this additional capital expenditure will be to make the facilities fully accessible to everybody, so that everyone who has a need to attend the crematorium can access safe and decent facilities while they're there. And I want to pay a real tribute to our bereavement services teams who do an excellent job when our residents need them at the worst moments of their lives. And they have been doing that job in really tricky circumstances because their own facilities have been of a really poor standard and nowhere near what we would expect for our employees. And so I'm really proud to be able to say that we're also improving facilities for those staff who work at the crematorium, as well as those people who use the service and visit. And that's the only thing I really wanted to highlight in the capital programme. In the additional expenditure, we're also, of course, putting some money into much needed safety survey of the Ousebridge walkway, so that we can make sure that we're not exposing our residents to risk while walking along the river. But I don't think I need to say too much about that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lomas. Yeah, will be good to get that sorted. And of course, I'd also pay tribute to the work of our staff and everybody at the crematorium. Clearly, you know, which is a fundamental part of many of our lives. Okay, so thank you all for that. I draw your attention to the recommendations and reasons on page 295, paragraph 12. All of the notes there. The revised capital programme is 382,998 and overall increase of 42.180. All those who are happy to approve those recommendations and reasons. Thank you all very much. That will be recommended to full council. And again, thank you, Debbie, members, and all the team who are doing an exceptional job, a really great job in what are very ongoing difficult circumstances. Okay, we now move to agenda items numbers 12 and 13, which we will take together. So that's capital financing and investment strategy and the Treasury Management Strategy statements and Prudential Indicators. So again, Debbie, over to you.
Nearly there. So, capital investment strategy is a regular standard report. It's a requirement of the Prudential Code. There have been no significant changes from the previous year. It sets out the approach and our risk appetite to funding of capital investment. It also includes a section on the effective receipts. So, given our risk appetite hasn't changed, I wouldn't expect this report to change very much year on year, if at all. The Treasury Management Strategy statement is another statutory report required by the Prudential Code. There are no significant changes to the strategy to bring to your attention. And again, the report will be considered by Audit and Governance Committee in their scrutiny role at their meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Any comments on either of these papers? No? Okay, in that case, we will move on to recommendations and reasons. So on page 332 at paragraph 7, we have the recommendation for the capital financing and investment strategy. Are members happy to approve that recommendation and reason? Thank you. And again, moving on to agenda item 30.
Page 322, you've got the second, that was you've just done item 13.
Okay.
Which was, that's the one,
I thought, sorry, just bear with us for a sec. I just did 323, 322.
322 is item 12.
Yep.
And then
And now we're on to item 13.
332. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 327. Never mind.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. All right, normal services is resumed. So again, if we look at the Treasury Management Strategy Statement Prudential Indicators, we are on page 332, paragraph number 6, recommendations and reasons there. Are members minded to approve? Thank you again. So that is approved unanimously. And that brings us to the end of the report. I have no urgent business that has been brought to my attention. So that will bring this meeting of executive to an end. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for your contributions. And most of these reports will now move on to full council. So thank you.